When I was in seminary, one of my favorite courses was taught by the Reverend Dr. Richard Gilbert, who has written a lot about peace and justice issues within the Unitarian Universalist movement. And the course that he taught was called Justice and Advocacy. Gilbert said that when he began the course, he said that many of our congregations are interested in doing the justice work outside of our walls, but they forget about the justice work inside their congregations. He said that many people in our congregations fall into the trap of letting individual rights trump the health and well-being of the community. And he said that justice is always trying to balance those two things. And that this is the case not only in the world out there, but in all of our relationships, and particularly within our congregations. So today, as I said earlier, I want to focus a little bit on congregational life. And I often think about the parts of congregational life as being kind of the parts of a house where you take in, the environment that you find yourself in, the foundations of what makes you a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and the walls, which I'm going to focus on today, I use as a metaphor for those kind of those unsexy documents that we all have, our bylaws, articles of association, policies, covenants, all of those kinds of things that actually help build the walls of a liberal, progressive community. As Gilbert suggests, we sometimes get stuck in our first principle, which is promoting the inherent worth and dignity of individuals in our congregations. We can act sometimes like that boy in the story where, we don't really like the rain, and we don't really notice the withering that's going on around us. We come and go based on whether we feel our inherent worth and dignity, in other words, our opinions and perspective, is given its full due. And rather than engaging in the deeper and transformative work of balancing our own needs with the needs of the community, we might decide to just leave. And we may look for another more perfect congregation to be attached to, one that suits us better. But as one of my colleagues reminds his congregational members quite often, if you find a perfect congregation, you should join it immediately. But then remember that once you join it, it's no longer going to be perfect. As Unitarian Universalists, we are not bound by creed, as many religious institutions are, but by covenant. I was going to look at your website to see if you have covenants here. You have covenants? I'm sure you have bylaws or something that that draws you together. Do you have? How many of you are familiar with the policies that you have here? Some of you. Okay. So we are, as Unitarian Universalists, we are bound by covenants and covenantal relationships, not by creed. So it's this concept that I want to focus on today as the frame, the walls that build our religious home, that act as kind of the glue that hold us together. Covenants in and of themselves don't assure life-giving communities. They may actually foster circles of exclusion that justify nasty treatment of people that we feel don't actually deserve to be in covenant with us. Consider the history of our Unitarian side of our movement. The Puritans and the Pilgrims of New England, when they first landed, they saw themselves as being in a hostile world, which we can sometimes see too. We sometimes think of ourselves as living in a hostile world. They first developed the concept of covenant on American soil and saw themselves as being separate. So they segregated themselves from the world that they lived in and created these kind of elitist religious communities based on covenants. And this sifting process through covenant had tragic consequences for indigenous peoples that they tried to either assimilate or annihilate. It had tragic consequences for women, wise women who they burned as witches, others that they deemed undesirable. It's hard for us sometimes to think of this as being part of our heritage, but it's true that it is. Our covenants need to correct this historic Unitarian bias toward banishing people who we don't see as being like us. The Universalist concept of covenant is very different. It's radically welcoming, and yet it balances individual needs with those of the needs of the whole. And that, Richard Gilbert says, is the background or the basis for what Reverend Safford called intimate justice. Because at the heart of these kinds of covenants is the relationship of all those who sign on. So that when there's a covenant broken, the goal is not to shun that person or exclude that person from your congregation, but to reconcile the parties that are in conflict. And while all of this sounds like a really marvelous idea, as Reverend Safford reminds us, it is really hard to do when you're living in community. One of the reasons I'm really passionate about covenants and covenantal life is because back in the day, I served as a good offices person for the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what that is it's a minister who is chosen by his or her colleagues to serve as a presence or to help with mediation when there's a congregational conflict between the minister and the congregation. And we do this in conjunction with the UUA staff. So if there's a conflict between minister and congregation, you usually have a good officer person there and a UUA staff person to help, mediate the conflict. I did this for 6 years. So I want to share with you some of what I learned there, not because I see you in conflict, not because I see you as an unhealthy congregation, because quite honestly, when I come here on Sunday mornings, all I see is healthy dynamics. But I'm sharing this as kind of a cautionary tale of things to watch out for in congregational life. So when we do this work, the first thing that we did is look at all the bylaws, policies, covenants, any foundational documents that the congregation has to see where a person or persons might be in conflict with what's written. I always saw all of these documents as being covenantal in theory, because together they represent a shared understanding of how members relate to one another. And so if you haven't read the bylaws of your congregation, you may want to take a look at them. Our goal was always to repair relationships, not to point fingers at who might be, who we wanted to banish, right? We wanted to repair relationships in a healthy way. And generally what I would find is that in congregations with a solid sense of purpose, well-written covenants, bylaws, procedures for handling conflicts in very respectful ways that maintain the integrity of all of the individuals involved, people usually didn't need our help, or we would just go in and spend a day with them. But I also worked with a lot of congregations where this was not the case, where we would work with a congregation for up to 6 months, trying to develop healthier ways for them to be in relationship with each other. I learned to spot the signs pretty well of a congregation that might be in dire straits. The thing to pay attention to is to watch what goes on in the parking lot after services. Watch for what Peter Steinke, who has written volumes about congregational life, calls murmuring. Steinke identifies 4 different kinds of murmuring. There are secrets, which are skeletons in the congregational closet that don't really get aired much or talked about, but there are a few people in the know that kind of hint at it once in a while, and other people might hear about it, but it's not really talked about in the open. Those are secrets. The second one are accusations, where one person is blamed or scapegoated for all of the bad things that are happening in the congregation. The third is are out and out lies or deceptions. That's intentional. And I have seen this in congregations too, where somebody says, "Oh, I was just trying to smooth over that problem," right? By not telling the truth about something. But actually, it does anything but smooth things over. And then the fourth one is triangulation, which actually gets talked about a lot, but it's not well understood. Triangulation happens when you go to another person to tell your story about something that's happening in the congregation, which in and of itself is not bad, but then you expect that person to solve your problem for you. Triangulation happens a lot with ministers and church leaders. If you go to a church leader and you say, "I've got this problem with this other person," and instead of fixing it with that other person, you expect who you go to talk with to fix it for you. That's triangulation. So that's the fourth kind of murmuring that Steinke says he hears in church parking lots. And visitors who hear this kind of stuff will almost never come back again. You can almost guarantee, unless they are heavy-duty murmurers themselves, they will find that kind of behavior really off-putting. Steinke talks a lot about a church that he consulted with in the Midwest that seemed really flummoxed about why they seemed to be really wilting on the vine and they couldn't get any new members, and we're like, we don't know what's wrong. And that Steinke watched in the parking lot, and then he drew their attention to this member called, his name was Ed Schmidt. And Ed Schmidt seemed to be particularly dissatisfied with a lot that was going on in the congregation. And so after services, he would gather people in the parking lot, holding court, passing on his complaints, and a lot of misinformation about who was doing what, to whom, and why. And because, people tend to want to be in the know, they would gather around him and listen. And Steinke told the group that the fix was not to get rid of Ed Schmidt, but to help everyone in the congregation realize how damaging that was when they would listen to him. Resist the temptation, he said, of murmuring, and learn to recognize when you're, and pardon my language, but learn to recognize when you're being schmitted on. It's probably not something you want to write down in your covenants, but it's a good thing to remember. Recognize how damaging that that kind of thing can be, and resist that murmuring. And then lastly, I want to mention some other kind of covenants I call soft covenants. The agreement not to murmur with each other is what I call a soft covenant. You don't need to write it down, but it's good to remember. And here are some other ones that I think help make congregations healthier and stronger. The first one is attend Sunday morning services whenever you can. If you are in town, you should be here on Sunday morning. Particularly after the pandemic, we need to get some buzz going in our congregations again. And you can do that by being here on Sunday mornings. And thank you all for making that commitment to be here this morning. Sunday morning is it's where our children get educated. It's where we sing together. It's where we celebrate what this congregation has to offer us. It is not about who's giving the sermon or what the topic is. So I would caution you to not look in your news bulletin to see who the speaker is before you decide whether you're going to be here or not. The sermon is only 15 to 20 minutes long out of the whole hour. So be here for the other 40 to 45 minutes to be with each other. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to participate in something every year that feeds your spirit, some sort of smaller gathering than what we have on Sunday mornings, because Sunday mornings are not the best place for you to get, to get acquainted with people on a deeper level. So someplace where you can develop stronger relationships and something that feeds your spirit. The third thing is to participate in some sort of outreach or service to the congregation each year, so that you are balancing your own needs with the needs of the community, practicing that intimate justice. And then the last one I want to mention is to consider the covenant you have with people outside your age group. Okay, we covenant in an intergenerational way. So, helping our elders that may no longer be able to be here on Sunday mornings is one of the ways that we can hold our covenant intergenerationally. And also teaching our children is an intergenerational covenant. Oftentimes it's the parents that end up teaching the children. And I want to say to you all this morning that parents have had a really difficult time the last couple of years, homeschooling their children and making sure that they're cared for in the midst of the pandemic. So anything that we can do to help them celebrate on Sunday mornings rather than having to be in the classroom with the children would be really, really wonderful. There is nothing more important to the future of our faith than ensuring that our children are taken care of. So whether that is just simply lighting a chalice with our youngest children and helping them feel at home here, or telling the stories of our faith to elementary school children, or helping our middle schoolers understand what Unitarian Universalism means in their lives, or helping our youth navigate questioning everything we've taught them so far, which is also an important aspect of what we do with our children. Teaching is a covenant that we make with our future. A community that learns the art of covenant making will build strong, sheltering walls to keep hate out and hold love in. Our relationships with one another are our most important and precious currency. We cannot afford to be unwise stewards of this precious resource. In the midst of an economic, political, and social system that seems to be increasingly bent on seeing some of us as expendable, we as a people of faith need to resist. So let us nurture our relationships, enrich our spirits, teach our children, and serve in ways that are consistent with our highest values. May it be so, and blessed be.